Oh hey, I didn't see you there. It's been so long since I've done one of these, I don't even know how to begin. So, how about with the title? This is How You Lose the Time War. It's kind of a banger of a title. It got me. The title and the fact that there's birds on the cover, and also that it is a sapphic love story. As always, I'm just going to read the description on the back of the book because the way I summarize is just by retelling the entire story, and we don't really have time for that. In the ashes of a dying world, Red finds a letter marked "Burn before reading." So begins an unlikely correspondence between two rival agents in a war that stretches between the vast reaches of time and space. Red belongs to the Agency, a post-singularity technotopia. Blue belongs to Garden, a single vast consciousness embedded in all organic matter. Their pasts are bloody and their futures mutually exclusive. They have nothing in common, save that they're the best and they're alone. Now what begins as a battlefield boast grows into a dangerous game, one both red and blue are determined to win. Because winning's what you do in war, isn't it? So this is told basically half through narrative and half through the letters that Red and Blue write back and forth. I think I need to be very honest up front. I do feel very underqualified to be talking about this book. Just straight up, I'm so positive that there's a lot of things that just kind of went over my head when I was reading this. That's why I wasn't sure if I should make this review at all. I didn't know what I would be able to add to the conversation that hasn't already been said about this book, because it has received a lot of praise, but then I figured that maybe my cute face will convince someone to click on this video who hasn't heard of this book before, and it'll convince them to read it, and then it'll change their life. So I figured that I'm just gonna shoot my shot, you know. So now that that's out of the way, I can just kind of like relax, okay, and go into the review. What's so interesting about this book is that it feels very fresh and original and like a brand new concept, all of those words, but if you look at the reason why it works, it's precisely because the authors Amal El-Motar and Max Gladstone, they expect the audience to be already familiar with a lot of the concepts they use and a lot of the tropes, and then they kind of just take those to the next level. Like, everyone is already familiar with the concept of time travel and cyborgs, techno-utopias, hive minds, star-crossed lovers. If you trust your audience to know those things, you don't have to dedicate like the pages and pages otherwise necessary to bring them into your world. And then, as is the case in this book, it'll feel so fleshed out, because basically all of the space in it is dedicated to what the story is actually about, which is the feelings and love. As an artful person, or an artist, if you will, there were two things that I really struggled with when it came to storytelling that kind of made me give it up or just take a break from it altogether. The first is that there was this idea going around, especially when I was in high school, maybe still, but when I was still developing as like a storyteller, that if something in your story even like ran parallel to one of the pages you could find on TV tropes, that made it bad and unoriginal. And two, for some reason, I assumed that the reader or viewer would be bringing nothing to the table, and I would have to spell everything out for them, and that's just like not how art works. Like, I'm, to be honest, like really embarrassed to even admit that this was even something that I had in my head, and I didn't even know really, or I never verbalized that it was something that I thought until I like sat down to write this review. And I don't know if this is a problem that other people share. when it comes to creating your own stories. I don't know if it was just me. I hope it's not. So yeah, anyway, those were just some things I had in my head that this book, just in its existence, was able to tell me, like, hey, you know, just stop worrying so much. Like, what is humanity but just an amalgamation of everyone who's lived before us? So just do your thing. It's okay. So that's all the stuff that I admired about the book when I sat down to like think about it afterwards and write this review. Oh, well, how did you like the book when you were reading it, Em? Did you enjoy it? Enjoy is kind of a strong word. I think a common metaphor that people use is like those magic eye posters, where I'm staring at this book and in theory I really do understand like all the things that people enjoy about it. Like I understand that there's an image there, people tell me, and I'm like, okay, like I'm looking and I know that I should be seeing something, and then I just don't. But you know, like maybe one day I'm gonna glance at it, and suddenly it'll click into place and I'll be like, oh, I get it. This is the final piece in an emotional puzzle that I didn't realize I needed, that proves that my existence as a human has been experienced already and cyclical, and proves that I'm never going to be alone in this world. Duh. The disconnect for me, I believe, really comes down to the style that this book is written in. I'm coming to terms with the fact that I experience media very literally, for lack of a more appropriate term. Like, I walked out of my first viewing of the original Suspiria thinking that the lighting was a little bit distracting to the story. And it wasn't until later viewings when I realized that the bulk of the story is actually the style it is told in. Such, I think, is the case with this book. People are calling it, like, beautiful, poetic, and I could really flip to any random page in here and just prove that to be the case. Like, here, I can just straight up do that right now. I dance to you in a body built for sweetness, a body that tears itself apart in defense of what it loves. This letter will sting you when it's done. Let it, and read a postscript in its death throes. I dance, this will be a very boring letter, because this thing in me, this piping heat, this rising sun that hardly fits in the sky of me won't stay put. To know you, my equal in this too, this beat of my blood's drum, this feast that won't diminish no matter how I ravage it. Red. Because of the way that, like, my brain is, I have a little trouble digesting this sort of thing without a little extra work. But if this is the kind of thing that you vibe with, baby, this book is gonna hit. In the end, this is a story about the slow descent into love, and the language that they use does nothing but contribute to that. It's actually so easy to recommend and just talk about this book without spoiling anything, because it is, it's about the emotions. So it's very like, you know, do you like feelings? Like, do you like to feel things? Here you go, book for you. Writing this review, I think, convinced me or showed me that I appreciated this more than I originally thought I did. I expected this to be much more like tepid and ambivalent, but I actually ended up writing like 5 pages on a Sunday night about it. I'm realizing also that I didn't actually talk about much of the actual story in this. I'm sure I could talk for another like 10 minutes or whatever about that, but instead I'm just gonna like link some other reviews that I've read down below who will probably do a better job than me in talking about the plot. Now comes time for me to say whether or not I recommend this book. If I can have a drum roll, yes, I do recommend it. Because here's the thing, like, it's so short. It's so short. And then the other thing is, within the first, like, few pages in the first chapter, like, you're gonna know whether or not you're vibing with the story. You're gonna know probably from this review if it's something that you're gonna vibe with. If you're a reader, there's like a lot of stuff in here for you to unpack. If you're like more of a very casual reader like I am, it's still not a huge time investment, which sounds underhanded, but I think that that's important. I don't know, there's something to be said about self-contained short stories where you can kind of digest the whole thing in like 1 or 2 settings, and they give you like a lot to think about beginning to end. I didn't write out an ending to this review because when I wrote it I wasn't sure how, and I still don't know how, so I'm going a little off the rails right now. But I'm glad to be back. I know that this is a really popular book right now, and I think the other reviews that I've done have all been on like older things that people wouldn't necessarily like read, except for Les Mis. People are really showing up for that one, for better or for worse. But I know that this one, I probably missed the boat a little bit, but this is newer and it's been pretty popular, so I don't want to use the word popular. It's been very well received. So if you read it, if you liked it, I really would like to know like what you thought. Like I said, there's like a lot of, I know there's references in here that I missed because they kept referring to the prophets, and I don't think I picked up on a single one of what those were. So if you know, please let me know. Yeah, and like I said, this is something that I want to get back into doing more regularly. I have a little more time now than I have over the past year. Thanks for watching. Hopefully I will be back sometime in the future. No promises, but maybe. Yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.